So I just found quite possibly the coolest dark oak forest that I've ever seen in the game. There is a luscious cave, I believe is what they're called, on the inside, and kind of looks like a bomb went off in there, but wow, I mean, what a landscape. I was coming over here for some dark oak wood, and I cannot believe what I just found. Now, I've made quite a bit of progress on the world so far as just getting a little house set up, getting some of our resources like diamonds, iron. Came out with like a stack and a half of diamonds. Oh no, dude, I don't really want that to go down there and burn the place up. I don't know if it will, but holy, this is incredible. I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get up there and get the wood that I need. So I'm gonna kind of go around here and see if I can find a way, maybe, to get some dark oak wood, because kind of need it. I was wanting to stay in my spawn area for the most part and not really expand too much in the world. I want to keep it kind of close to home, which I still am out here fairly close to home. But this is just an incredible island out here in the middle of the ocean. Speaking of being a little bit closer to home, we are back at the house. We're gonna sleep this night away so it's not as jarring. Don't want to cut to daylight here. But during this episode, I'm hoping to complete this path and then also build kind of like a dock area on this river. I might have to clean out some of this gravel here. Now, the topic of today's video, it's going to be a little bit more on the educational side rather than the little depressing side I feel like the last one was on, but this is actually going to be about the chronic disease that I live with on a daily basis. So if left unchecked, this disease absolutely could kill somebody. Now, it is completely manageable. You can live with it. You can live a very long and happy life as long as you take care of yourself. And the disease that I am talking about is very well known in America, actually. So the disease that is in question is type 1 diabetes. And now, whenever people hear diabetes, there's always kind of a common misconception that every diabetic has lived the same life. They have eaten a lot of sugar, they drink soda all the time, and they are usually overweight, right? That's typically the understanding of diabetics in the world. However, there are two different types of diabetes, and I am a type 1 diabetic. So let's kind of start with just the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes. And that's because most of the time, the individuals that were contracting this disease were juveniles. They were younger children, typically not as young as I was diagnosed. I was diagnosed at 16 months old. But we're talking kids that typically are around the puberty age. And the reason for that is because this disease is usually started by some sort of traumatic event. And puberty is typically a traumatic event for people, even if it's not described as that. The body changes quite a bit. And that can be the ultimate cause for type 1 diabetes. For me, I was diagnosed at 16 months, so definitely wasn't puberty. I think I gave my mom quite the run during her pregnancy, and that's ultimately what led to me ending up with it. Also, my dad is a type 1 diabetic, and he was diagnosed at 14 years old, so had the genetic predisposition as well. That did not help my case. But type 2 is referred to as adult onset diabetes, or used to be adult onset diabetes, because now children are getting it due to kind of the things that we had discussed before about poor diet, lack of exercise, and overall just unhealthy lifestyle, right? That's kind of what a lot of people think of when they think of diabetes is an unhealthy lifestyle that has ultimately led to that being an issue. So there's a lot of similarities between the diseases. Both have to take insulin every day, test their blood sugar every day to make sure that everything is on track. My dark oak tree finally grew. It's awesome. So type 2 diabetics will also typically have to take some sort of prescription pill to help manage and regulate the amount of insulin that their body is producing, because they still produce insulin despite having diabetes. Type 1 diabetics produce zero insulin and will always have to supplement with either an insulin pump or shots or an insulin pen, which is still a subcutaneous injection under the skin. So the first thing that can happen with diabetics is low blood sugar. We're going to cover that first because it's a little bit easier to cover, and it is also the fastest way to an early grave for diabetics. Now, type 1 diabetics are usually the ones that have to worry about this a little bit more because we're taking insulin more often every time we eat. Anytime our blood sugar is high, we have to correct with an insulin dosage. Type 2 diabetics will typically only dose twice a day with long-lasting insulin, again, to just help regulate their blood sugar levels throughout the day. So what happens with low blood sugar? Essentially, the sugar in your blood gets to a point where your body can no longer function. Your organs start to shut down. You get a little bit confused. There's some mild, moderate, and severe symptoms that we'll cover. So like shaking, sweating, nervousness, dizziness, lightheadedness, fast heartbeat, hunger, and irritability. Those are all gonna be the kind of moderate symptoms, and symptoms that I do experience kind of on a regular basis. Now, these symptoms are things that I have experienced all the time. Low blood sugar is kind of a common theme that you're gonna experience as a type 1 diabetic. It might be something else to experience as a type 2 diabetic. It really just all depends on how well you are handling your disease, right? So again, it is kind of scary because low blood sugar can be fatal very quickly. So the moderate symptoms are difficulty concentrating, slurred speech, confusion, unusual behavior. Sounds a little bit familiar if you are used to drinking alcohol, if you're of age. And then the severe symptoms can be seizures, loss of consciousness, and coma. So there's actually been people that have been pulled over for drunk driving because of low blood sugar and sobriety tested, and then ultimately the officer found out that this individual was just experiencing low blood sugar. Now, there are some pretty simple solutions to low blood sugar. Essentially, you have to eat sugar, right? So this common misconception that type 1 diabetics or diabetics in general cannot eat any sugar is completely false. We need sugar to survive. And in an episode of low blood sugar, I will typically use something along the lines of, let's see how these look. Something along the lines of fruit snacks, some sort of sugary drink like a Coke or a juice box. Typically, I'll only go for a Coke if it is something that needs to be solved immediately. Like it is kind of not a dire situation, but a little bit more of a severe low. And then we also have nasal spray and glucagon for those severe lows. So glucagon is actually something that has saved my life a couple times, as I have been a victim of seizures from diabetes in the past, and it works. It's kind of like a diabetic EpiPen, Typically, there has to be somebody administering it to the individual because the individual who needs it is likely unconscious already. Now, all of this is contingent on the fact that the person who is unconscious or approaching that space is carrying their glucagon shot or nasal spray with them, right? So, low blood sugar is a little scary. All right, it's been a couple days, and I know we were talking about low blood sugar. I've made a few changes around the house here. You might be able to spot them. Added some lamps, finished up the dock here. I've just gotten busy over the past few days, and my interests have been kind of sporadic. So got rid of the sand here, put some grass in, bone mealed the ground. I don't know if that was already done beforehand, but now we can move on to talking about high blood sugar and the issues that can cause, right? So I'm going to build a little farm here. While I talk about this, I managed to go and find a village that had carrots and potatoes off in that direction. Kind of robbed them of some stuff, found a few decent items like a stone cutter, ended up making some scaffolding. They had a bundle over there as well, so not too bad of a haul. I picked up some firefly bushes, added those around to kind of increase the ambiance of our world, I guess. So let's kind of get rolling here. We're going to do wheat, potatoes, and carrots. While low blood sugar can be pretty complicated, high blood sugar is usually the way that people end up with diabetic complications, and it can lead to heart disease, kidney failure, diabetic neuropathy, which means that you lose feeling in your hands and feet, the outermost extremities of your body, because the blood has a much harder time flowing to the outer extremities, and the heart has a harder time pumping blood to those outer extremities as well, which is the reason why it can lead to heart disease, puts a lot of stress on your heart. And so typically with people that have type 2 diabetes, you're going to see that these people struggle from maintaining their blood sugar in a way that keeps it on the lower side. And if you're a type 1 diabetic, high blood sugar is going to happen. You can forget to bolus for your food, stress, you can get sick. All of these things kind of impact the way your blood sugar is going to behave throughout any given day, week, month, whatever it is. You know, it just really depends. I know that in my life, every time I get sick, my blood sugar is running at, around that 200 range, which is just how I can tell that, okay, oh boy, here we go. I'm getting sick this week and there's nothing I can do about it if it's consistent and I can't get it down. But in the short term, high blood sugar isn't really all that bad. It can be, and you definitely don't want to have high blood sugar at all if you can prevent it. But it is not nearly as bad as low blood sugar in the short term. The complications come in the long term, where it'll have great impacts over time. So extended high blood sugar will result in effects to your kidneys, again, your eyesight. All of these things are permanent. And the unfortunate part is that you don't really know how your body is going to react to high blood sugar or how it's going to tolerate the side effects. Now, I've been fortunate because I feel like my body is very tolerant to a lot of the issues that come from high blood sugar. The hard part is you don't know that your body's tolerant until it's happening, right? So you don't know that your body's going to put up with the abuse or how it's going to put up the abuse until you're at that point of permanent damage being done, right? Now, I've had diabetes for 20-something years. I am fortunate enough to not have any retinopathy, any neuropathy. I still have really good kidney health, and I'm very thankful for that. If you've heard somebody tell you, oh, my grandma had diabetes and she lost her legs, that is usually from high blood sugar and specifically neuropathy. So what happens is somebody will not know that they have a sore or something on the bottom of their foot, and that sore begins to fester, right? So they don't know it's there because they can't feel it, and that sore will fester. It will then go gangrene. That can go into the bone after that, and I mean, that's all she wrote at that point. Typically they have to take the foot or take the leg at the knee, or even sometimes at the hip, which is super unfortunate. And again, all of this is preventable. I've had in my life a few instances where I've gone into diabetic ketoacidosis. Actually, I think it's only been one time. I was very young. I was in diabetic ketoacidosis when I was diagnosed, and then I think one other time, and that's essentially the point where the body starts to shut down because it can't deal with the high blood sugar, and ultimately, yeah, body just starts to kind of shut down and turn off. I don't know how I'm liking this. I think this will do for now, but we're gonna probably change this in the near future. I kind of just like having the tree there. I do need to get some light going. But yeah, it's kind of funny because I know a lot of nurses and I know a lot of people that are kind of working in the health industry, and you know, when I tell them what my highest blood sugar has been in the past, like I've had blood sugars above 600 and I'm still up and walking around and conscious. A lot of people will go into DKA at that point, and sometimes diabetic comas as well, which is not good, right? It's not something to be proud of, but it's the reality of my life. I've had very high blood sugar. I've also had very low blood sugar and still been conscious. So again, I think it's really just about how your body responds and reacts and how tolerant it is to the abuse. But again, you don't really want to get to the point where you're finding out how tolerant it is. You want to stay on top of it so you can prevent that irreversible damage moving forward. So anyway, I don't know, again, if any of this is making sense, but I've been kind of scatterbrained, and I've had a hard time kind of getting through this episode, actually, which is kind of funny. Yeah, I've had kind of just a hard time getting through this and knowing what I'm trying to say at any given moment. Again, lately I've been super scatterbrained and just trying to collect my thoughts. I even tried to write a script for this, and man, I haven't been able to get my thoughts straight lately. So I also discovered a new hobby, or at least started exploring a new hobby. I bought an RC car the other day just because, again, a lot of my hobbies here in the Southeast just don't exist. I can't snowboard. Mountain biking doesn't exist because I'm right on the coast. And so one of my buddies brought up RC cars, and I kind of just started hyperfixating on that. So been really interested in that. I bought a 3S electric basher vehicle that is super fast, like 50 miles an hour out of the box, which has been kind of fun to play with. But other than that, man, it's been pretty mundane lately. So I think we've made some pretty decent progress in this video. We built this awesome looking dock. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out with the detailing. Spruced up the front of the house a little bit. We've got our farm going finally, and that'll start growing. We'll start adding more and more to it. Tree farm with dark oak and regular oak trees as well. The world's starting to kind of come together. I think we'll start expanding over into the jungle. That's really where I want to build. I want to kind of do like an overgrown style of building in there with a storage room and go from there. But I think we'll also have to make a barn and start getting some animals ready to go out here in the plains biome. So we're going to essentially just start leaving everything as is moving forward. Maybe alter a few things here and there with the farm and whatnot, but I kind of want to just let it be a story of building style and how we've kind of progressed through the world from start to end. So that is pretty much it. I want to thank you all for sticking around and listening, and I will see you in the next video.